Afternoon, councillors. It's gone 4:30 and I welcome you all to our council meeting from Skype. There's no real need to carry through with housekeeping as we have no audience in the chambers, a couple of staff members who are well aware of the emergency procedure. The next item on the agenda is public forum, and my understanding is we have a speaker to speak in public forum. That's Bill Chapman. So I'll hand over to the director to bring Bill in on us. You there, Bill? Can you hear me, Bill Chapman?
Mr. Chapman, can you hear us?
You're connecting now. Great. Afternoon, Bill. Can you hear us now?
I can now. Yep.
Thank you. Well, I've just called on public forum, so if you'd like to address council, it's your time now. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak to you in regards to item 2079, which is 2018 BA 00014. Our last correspondence received from council on this matter was in their email letter of the 6th of December 2019, requesting we reply to their earlier request for further information. We replied to council on the 18th of December, which council received on the 23rd from their report. As we received no further communication from council since that date until late Friday afternoon, just Friday gone, we were under the impression that council was satisfied with the response and the council were working towards an expected approval subject to conditions. That was what myself and the developer actually believed. If council were not satisfied, then it is reasonable to expect, and on the basis of 35 years of previous experience and precedent with processing DAs through council, we have received either a phone call, had a meeting arranged to discuss, had an email, a letter requesting clarification, discussion or alternatives. We received no communication. This extends to the phone call at 4:57 Friday afternoon. In that I was advised that the DA was going to the meeting today and would I like to address council. This was actually the first time I knew that it was going to this meeting. I stated that it depends on what are council's recommendations. I was told that the report was still yet to be released and I replied to put me down to speak. This Monday morning was the first time that we had any indication that council was recommending a refusal. Effectively, we've been given no advice or opportunity to respond to this report as we would have reasonably expected. We also understand there were a number of objections received. We were given no information on these and were again given no opportunity to respond to them. We request that this item be withdrawn from this meeting and deferred to a later date so that we can meet with the appropriate council officers to discuss the obvious issues and that reasonable time can be given to reply and respond to council's concerns. Development is important to Young and it is our aim to progress this development to an outcome acceptable to council and to our client. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much for that, Bill. Appreciate your input there. Okay, councillors, it's a public forum. The next matter is I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we all meet on this afternoon, the Wiradjuri people, and pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. While we're all on Skype indeed and live stream, so is the council meeting, so that the council has been streamed live in accordance with council's live streaming policy. To those present in the gallery today, which are zero at the moment, unless they're hooked in, like Bill was, by attending this meeting, anything you say and can be recorded and heard over the live stream. The chair or the general manager have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination of interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour. behaviour and or comments. Next item on the agenda is attendance. Any apologies? I believe all councillors are present. There's no apologies for tonight's meeting. The next item, councillors, is the expressions of sympathy. We have standing, and I'll do that now. I'd ask councillors and staff to have a moment's silence for the following, please. Gwyneth Briggs, Joan Robinson, William Fenson, Lorna Parkman, Leonard Apps, William Nichols, James Cusack, Simon Jasprizzi, Barry Braddon, Ronald Thurtell, William Winfred, Neville Wood, Colin Causer, Jeffrey Gravenmaker, Austin Whitaker, Robert Berry, and Elizabeth Smith. Thank you all. Next item on the agenda, councillors, is the confirmation of the minutes from Hilltops Council's ordinary meeting, 25th of March 2020. Do I have a mover? Move, councillor. Seconded, councillor Horton. All those in favour?
Aye.
We might just have the general manager run through the process again for councillors.
Okay, so you don't need to unmute your microphones. Can you please raise your left hand so we can see it and so that the mayor can see and note it? So I can see
all those in favour?
all those, yep. So you need to raise it very clearly above you. Okay, so we can see Councillor Wallace, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Tuckerman, Councillor Manchester, Councillor Walker, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Horton, Councillor Rolls, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Stadmiller, you have not raised your left hand. Are you voting against the minutes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I wasn't present at the meeting, so normally that prevents someone from voting on those minutes I was aware of, but if that's wrong, I'm happy to confirm it.
A non-vote is a vote against.
Yep, so if you don't vote, what you're doing is you're voting in your capacity as a councillor that you believe the due process has been undertaken at the meeting. If you do not vote, it is counted as a negative. You will vote. You can't abstain.
That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
Question?
Question, councillor Walker.
Yes. On page 11, and I haven't got the minutes in front of me, but there was, regarding the section 64 contribution toward the quarry development, did anything that you were going to look into, or someone was going to look into whether they make a contribution as part of that development? Did anything come of that?
Council, we're just adopting minutes. We're not doing matters arising from the minutes at the moment. We're just adopting the minutes to true and accurate record. That's probably more representative for a question on notice, I'd imagine.
When will it be addressed?
I'll hand over to the General Manager.
Okay, I'll need to defer to the either the Director of Sustainable or Director of Infrastructure in relation to the quantum of the contribution.
It's not a matter to be dealt with now.
But it's not a matter to be dealt with now. I do recall that was asked Councillor Walker. I haven't received a response from my directors at this point, but it is duly noted that we need to follow that up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, follow it up.
Thank you. Councillor Manchester's got his hand raised. Councillor Manchester, did you wish to say something or no? You got to unmute yourself. Councillor Manchester, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Just a point on that. Water quarries do actually pay a Section 94. I'm not sure of the amount, but they do. They have been since it was instigated a number of years ago.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Next item on the agenda is disclosures of interest. Any councillors any disclosures of interest to declare on tonight's meeting? Councillor Tuckerman.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you have a mayoral minute, which I have a interest in, so I'd like to abstain from voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckerman. It's noted. The next item that we will deal with is the, before I deal with 2079, we'll deal with the mayoral minute that hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to see that was sent out today. Timing was a bit late, unfortunately, but it's in regard to asking for some financial help in regard to all matters related to COVID-19, and it's a matter of being a joint voice with all local government bodies being involved, so that our request carries more weight, which is normally the case when you have a unified front. And that's the recommendation of the mayoral minute that I'll put forward. And as it states, we will write and be in contact with a number of state and federal members, as will other councils in New South Wales seeking to achieve some financial relief, in the hope that we may be able to pass some of that relief on to our ratepayers that are finding things difficult and suffering some hardship at the moment. So I would like to think I would have support of councillors with that mayoral minute. And on that note, I'd like to move that we accept that mayoral minute. Have I got a seconder? Seconded, Councillor O'Connor. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Councillor Walker? No? Okay. Councillor Tuckerman abstained because of interest. All other councils were in favour, excepting those against. Councillor Walker. So we got that, Deirdre, you're right. Thank you very much for that, councillors. Before we go any further, as a normal process, if we have something spoken about in public forum, we normally bring it forward so that people have their business dealt with, rather than sit there all night and wait for it to come up. So the item is 2079, and I'd like to move that council defers this matter to enable the applicant sufficient time to respond to council's request for more information. And if I have a seconder, I'll elaborate a bit more if you like it. Councillor Horton, thank you. Second. That, I don't know if I need to say too much about it on that point that you heard Bill Chapman speak in public forum in regard to the matter. There's been correspondence received from the applicant wishing to have it deferred so that staff and the applicant can sit down and go through the issues that need to be go through. There's obviously been a bit of miscommunication between both parties, so the best outcome for us councillors, I believe, is to defer this matter to the next council meeting. On that note, all those in favour? Unanimous, haven't I?
Yep.
Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That's been dealt with. Go back to my agenda, which is the reports, and the mayoral report is there. There's not a lot to report given our situation with COVID-19, but I'd ask that someone move and second it that to be accepted as the mayor's report. Move Councillor Armstrong, second to Councillor Flannery. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. The next item is councillors' reports. Now I have in our paper councillors' reports from Councillor Horton, Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Rolls. I'd ask those three councillors in that order first if they'd like to speak to anything in there, or if they're happy enough for that just to be reported as it is. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm happy enough, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Horton.
Be enough, thank you.
Councillor O'Connor, you happy for that?
I am, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Rolls.
You need to unmute.
Yes, I'm happy, thank you.
Thank you. So that'll take me around to Councillor Walker.
Meeting is minuted.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, the Zoom meeting on the 6th of April and this council meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Zoom meeting on the 6th of April, the LEP meeting on the 7th of April, and today's council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Zero, Mr Mayor. Can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Yeah, just today's meeting.
We're having a problem with the audio, Councillor, now.
Just today. Oh, okay. No, zero.
Thank you. Sign language work, fine. Councillor Stadmiller.
Same as Councillor Walker due to the COVID-19 restrictions.
Thank you. Councillor Tuckerman.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The Zoom meeting on the 6th and today's council meeting.
Thank you. And Councillor Manchester.
The meeting on the 6th of April, the Zoom meeting, and the LEP meeting on the 7th of April, and meetings as minuted, and including today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Could I have a move and a second that those reports be accepted? Thank you. Councillor Flannery moved, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Has anyone got anyone for the community recognition scheme this month?
Mr Mayor, if I could, I'd like to council to acknowledge the fine effort of all our health professionals and those people involved in the provision of services ongoing to the community during this very difficult time.
It's great sentiment, Councillor Armstrong, and what we can do as a council organisation is get some letters out to those relevant bodies, and I've been in contact with Superintendent Jacob Reeves quite often. He checks in to see how we're going and keeps council informed of how things are happening on their front, and it's been a great joint effort by everyone. They're all to be congratulated. Thank you for that. So that takes us to the General Manager's report, and that item is the first one is the cash and investment report. Do I have a move? Councillor Manchester. Seconded, Councillor Horton. Thank you. Any questions? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Next item is an update on outstanding rates and charges collection report. Report's there. Do I have a mover? Moved, Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Horton. Got his hand there. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment to the report.
Amendment. Okay, Councillor Flannery.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that the recommendation be that Council receives and notes the report, and item B, with reference to the COVID issue or COVID crisis, that Council instantly cease interest on outstanding rates charges until further notice, and it works to minimise the exacerbation. Well, if you could just include that instantly cease interest on outstanding rates charges as further notice, then I'll talk to the amendment.
Well, the first thing we've got to do is talk to a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Do the mover and seconder accept the amendment? That's the first question I asked. It was moved by Councillor O'Connor, wasn't it?
Yes, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Councillor O'Connor accepts that. Councillor Horton.
Mr Mayor, I don't accept it.
Okay. So I need to treat the item that we had moved and seconded first. And that is the council receives and notes the report. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Tuckman.
I believe if Councillor Flannery is moving an amendment, that you deal with that first.
You didn't move it as an amendment.
Yep, I've been corrected before and I'll stand to be corrected again, and that's not a problem to me if that is the case.
I'm not used to this.
Just bear with us for a second, councillors.
17. There's a motion. Yeah, it's a movement of amendment, so the amendment needs to be debated first.
Thank you for that. Councillor Tuckerman.
It needs to be seconded, so the amendment needs to be seconded by a councillor.
So what I'm after now is a seconder for the amendment. Seconder, Councillor Manchester. Thank you. Would Councillor Flannery like to speak to his amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, in light of the COVID crisis and acknowledging that there is a significant amount of rates outstanding, but interest charges are only going to exacerbate the situation for those who are in financial problems or encountering financial problems. They are not a budgeted item. You know, we don't budget to have outstanding rates, so therefore I don't believe it needs an amendment to the budget. I think all levels of government, and noting the mayoral minute, but I think all level of government need to put their hand up to help out what is a very, very difficult situation. So I think I will be moving a number of other small packages, I think later in the meeting, but I don't believe we should be exacerbating the situation by charging interest on outstanding rates until we can get through this crisis and deal with those who are being affected by job losses or lower income.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. I'd ask anyone like to speak against the amendment.
I just need to make a note.
No, Councillor Wallace.
Can you hear me this time, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Wallace.
Good. Yes. No, look, I just think that there are outstanding rates for many reasons, and some of these may have been outstanding for a considerable period of time. We don't know why those rates are outstanding. I think the blanket suspend interest isn't equitable for all those people and for the people who have paid. So there's no money coming from the state or federal government to cover us for this, and I think for us to do this would be remiss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. So would anyone else like to... Sorry?
Can I speak point of clarification?
Councillor Walker, just one moment, please. Would anyone else like to speak for the amended motion? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Flannery on this one. And although some residents may have other reasons why they have been unable to pay their rates up until this stage, the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated some circumstances for those people, and I'm well aware of people in the community that really are struggling. And I know this will only make a minor financial sort of response to their issues, but I think we really should do our best to help out those suffering in the community at the moment, and continue to lobby the state government for improved funding.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Would anyone else like to speak against the amendment? Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to agree with the sentiments of Councillor Wallace. Whilst I understand the difficulties that people have in paying rates during times such as these, this action, I feel, would effectively encourage the non-compliant ratepayers to continue with their non-compliance, and certainly discourage those compliant ratepayers from being compliant in the future. I think that there should be other means of providing relief, and certainly Council does have a policy that relates to rate relief. I'm uncertain as to how many applications have been received, but I believe that the application of that policy is the correct means of providing that support. I would remind Council that Council is cash strapped, and with an operating loss last year of millions of dollars, to write back any amount now in the form of relief without proper due course, I believe is an action that is an action in error.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Look, I had some more hands in the air there, so in the sake of being fair to everybody, is there anyone else that'd like to speak for the amendment? So Councillor Horton would like to speak for the amendment. Councillor, I just want to make sure you're aware of what you're about to speak. You're speaking for the amendment, but a moment ago you wouldn't accept it, so...
I'm speaking against the amendment being accepted.
No, well, I'm looking for a speaker to speak for it, Councillor Horton.
Thank you.
There's no other hands in the air there, so Councillor Horton obviously wanted to speak against it. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whilst it's a small amount for the ratepayers, the interest is very low. It's a lot of money for council. We're already something like 8 million trying to recoup from the ratepayers. As I said, it's not a lot for the ratepayers, but it's a lot for council, and so I'm against that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before we go any further, I'll just give Councillor Flannery right of reply for his amendment before I put it. Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, look, listening to the speakers against it, I acknowledge everything they're saying. However, I think to get back to some basic principles, the threat of a jail sentence never really deters a criminal, and I don't believe the threat of interest is going to deter those who are wavering on whether they will or won't pay their rates. Those who can afford to pay their rates, I genuinely believe do pay their rates. Those who are suffering financial hardship by and large for various reasons don't pay their rates. We are working to try and reverse a trend where there's been a drop in rate collections, and I'm not in any way suggesting we should ease back on that or provide overall relief to rates. But I think when we're seeing the amount of money that the federal government is stumping up and the state government, we have got to be aware of what our role is in the community. And it's simply my view that we, for this short period, suspend interest charges. I don't believe it's going to make a significant financial difference to council in the loss of interest income. And I also believe we should continue our work to recoup the rates that are outstanding as assiduously as we have been in the last few months. I also think that it provides a little bit of an opportunity for council to show goodwill to those who are in trouble, and we can work with them then. But it's just known that when people get in arrears, adding stress to stress just causes more stress. And I think for those, I agree with all the comments of those who spoke against it, but I think these are exceptional circumstances. I urge you to reconsider.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. I'll now put the amendment that Councillor Flannery had up. A was receive and note the report, and B was to suspend.
All interest
on
outstanding amounts.
So all those in favour of the amendment, raise your hand, please. So can we get a count? Okay. French Manchester, Councillor Flannery, Councillor Rolls, Councillor Stadmiller, and Councillor O'Connor. Is that correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just might hold your hands up just for a moment. Give me time, Councillor, just to make sure we don't. That's okay. Thank you, councillors. We've got those councillors listed. So those against the amendment, would you raise your hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That amendment to the motion is lost. So we now deal with the recommendation that had a mover and a second, which was receive and note the report. All those in favour? Got them, Deirdre? Can you see them, Deirdre? Have I got to call them out?
You can call them out.
Cool. Pardon?
Could you call them out?
Councillor Manchester, Councillor Walker, Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Horton, Councillor Rolls, Councillor Stadmiller, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Tuckerman, and myself. So we're left with. Those against is Councillor Flannery. Thank you, councillors, for bearing with us. It's just to make sure that Deirdre gets time to we get that right. The next item, unless I've skipped a page, which could have happened, 1277, is the development application stats for March 2020. There's a report there, councillors, and a recommendation. It's moved by Councillor Manchester, I take it. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Rolls. Thank you. Any questions or comments in regard to that report? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We go to 2078. Submission to draft proposed state heritage register listing of the site of the Landing Flat anti-Chinese riot site and associated banner. Young. There's a detailed report there, councillors, and a recommendation that goes with it. We'll have a mover and a seconder. It starts. Move Councillor O'Connor. Seconded. Councillor Horton, thank you. Any questions or concerns or debate on that item? Councillor Walker's got his hand raised first. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I'll get to it. I did have some questions, but I haven't got the report in front of me, so it's hard for me to address them as such. But I've noted some, taken some notes here, where it mentions that the amendments address tourism and fundraising potential, and I failed to see when we haven't got a full report on, for example, it mentions the RIOT Act being read in that point, but I haven't seen a report on a full tourism report on how it addresses all tourism or all events associated with the Chinese riots, so we can compare. There's a big picture. What I'm seeing now is we're looking at something in isolation rather than as a full report as far as heritage is concerned, Chinese heritage.
Thank you for that, Councillor Walker. I saw someone, Councillor Armstrong, with a hand up. Next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm just confused. This is a shotgun style approach to a recommendation that has options in there that are at conflict with each other. The recommendation, as put, as moved and seconded now, is effectively open-ended. I'd like to move an amendment that the recommendation or the council adopt option 3 or B3, C and D.
Okay, so the councillors who moved that item, Councillor O'Connor and Councillor Horton, Councillor Armstrong is saying basically to take out, not to worry about A and B, to concentrate on the recommendation reading option 3, consider heritage listing with amended proposed Kirtliff boundary. Endorse option 3, consider a further report coming back. So that's the proposed amendment by Councillor Armstrong. Is the mover and seconder happy for that?
I'm happy, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
So I've got the mover and the seconder who are happy for that to be the recommendation. Taking out that. Okay. So anyone else like to? I saw Councillor Manchester's hand up. Did you want to make a comment, Councillor Manchester?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I know it's mentioned in there that it shouldn't have an impact on the library. I'm a little bit concerned that it may somewhere down the track have an impact on it, and we probably don't need any reason to open up a can of worms with the further development of the library. And, also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. It doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the library. And also when you look at the map, the heritage map, it doesn't look like it's going to have an impact on the it doesn't include some heritage. I would have thought heritage buildings that are in the TAFE precinct. It goes around the TAFE precinct, so I would assume that buildings, some of the old buildings in the TAFE area would have just as much heritage as some of the buildings in the high school precinct. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else like to have a comment? No, I can't see. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, look, I agree with the comments that it's a bit of a shotgun approach. I really struggle to see what heritage value and what significance we get out of the listing of this. I just think it's. I just can't see why it's come to us without greater detail, without more specifics as to what they're trying to protect.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Wallace. Councillor Wallace, sorry, top of the corner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Echoing Councillor Flannery's comments, I need more detail on the report when we don't know why the streets have been included. And I agree with Councillor Manchester, surely some of those buildings on the TAFE side should be included if this was to happen. So I think if we could possibly get further the item and get further information from the Heritage Council on the documentation that they made that decision on and the documents that they created as well. That would be good.
Thank you. That Councillor Wallace, do you want to speak to any other councillors or any other councillors? I've had a movement second for the item, so I'm just going to take some advice because it sounds, and I'm hearing, like a referral is going to be called for. So I just might take some advice on what we do with the motion that I've got a movement second for. If we were to vote that recommendation out, does the whole thing go away and can't come back for a certain amount of time? Or do we have to have another amendment moved for a referral?
I'm going on the basis on how these work. I think it would be appropriate that one of the councillors that speak to concerns raise a foreshadow motion. So you foreshadow a motion that should the motion fail, so you vote it down, but you foreshadow a moment before that motion is lost, foreshadow that you would request further information being given on what the heritage value proposed by the heritage, the state heritage register proposal would mean for this council. And so if you foreshadow it, you don't lose it. You vote it down, you're rejecting it at this point in time, but should it come back at the next meeting, you've done it appropriately that you foreshadowed that you wanted more information, which was the reason why the motion failed. So you have no problem with raising something that otherwise you've already voted upon.
Councillor Flannery, I see your hand there.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to foreshadow a motion along those lines that we ask for further detail from the Heritage Council regarding buildings and items they specifically seek to preserve.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Comment, if I might. I think it needs to go further than that. I think that the area needs to be extended. Not only the ones they want to identify, but also there's areas to be extended. I'm thinking of areas like what has been mentioned in the tape, but also the opposite side down Gordon Street with something to look out. It's all part of that action.
I just want to bring General Manager in just for a second.
I just want to remind councillors that the Heritage Council of New South Wales asked for submissions. So it's not. So it is the submission of council that we were looking to endorse, and the submission that was proposed was to take out the road structure because of essentially the electricity and telephone system. You don't want that hanging over you, but in principle, the people within council didn't see an issue with that per se, which was the recommendation. So it's not something we can control, it is only the submission. So notwithstanding whatever submission we make, certainly we will bring back that information for you to make a more fully informed decision about what the submission of this council is. It is just a submission, so we don't control this at this point. They will determine it.
Okay, with that been clarified a little bit, we have a council document.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to point out that there was some dates in regards to those submissions, and we have received an extension. I think it's important that from a council perspective that we do our homework in regards to what we think the value is of listing it heritage. I know there was a heritage document done by the library project in regards to the actual lambing flat riot, and that had some interesting comments in regards to the site. So I think we just need to do our homework around that information, and I'm not sure why roads were included. I don't know why certain buildings within the site and not others were included, and perhaps that's information that we can seek from the heritage people in regards to our submission.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckerman. Okay, so I've got a move and second, and I've got a foreshadow motion. We got the foreshadow motion. Yep. So we deal with the one that the first one moved and seconded, and that was
one that was
amended. The Councillor Armstrong amended to read: the council adopt the option 3, C and D of that recommendation. So I'll put that. All those in favour of accepting that, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's Ingram, Horton, Tuckerman, Stadmiller, Rolls, and Armstrong. Got those orders? So, Deirdre? Yes. Those against? Is Councillor Manchester, Councillor Flannery, Councillor Wallace, Councillor O'Connor, and Councillor Walker. So that recommendation is carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on to item 79 has been dealt with. 2080 is water meter sale to BRIBBAREE Progress Association. Councillor Councillor Walker. Seconded, Councillor Manchester.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment.
Councillor Armstrong's got an amendment. Councillor Armstrong.
Just in regard to this matter, the recommendation as it is there now won't allow for any further extensions any further connections of the to supply of water meters for any further connections to the water supply. The other thing, of course, is it sets a price. So if the cost price of the water meters goes up or comes down, then council will have committed to $55. So my suggestion is that we should be looking at providing the water meters to BRIBBAREE Progress Association at the in-store cost price, where such meters will be connected to the BRIBBAREE water supply. So if they're not connected to the water supply, they're not at our current in-store cost price. And if they are, then they can come and buy them off us as they wish for those connections. I just don't want to see this come back to council next month because there's 2 extra connections, and the month after because another 2 connections, and the month after another 2 connections. I think we can tidy this up and provide the same effect.
Councillor Armstrong, as you speak, it makes a lot of sense. So we'll just get our penciler just to get the wording of the actual dot point B that you'd like. Have you got it worded, Councillor Armstrong?
Yes, I'll read it nice and slowly.
Thank you.
The recommendation will be that council provide water meters to BRIBBAREE Progress Association at the in-store cost price, where such meters will be connected to the BRIBBAREE water supply.
Okay, happy with that? Yep. So Councillor Walker and Councillor Manchester would move and the seconder. Are you happy for that amendment to be put in place, councillors?
No, well, I need it clarified why the BRIBBAREE Progress Association is involved when it is between the user and council. I just need that clarified.
Director of Infrastructure, like to come in on that.
Need to unmute. Director of Infrastructure, like your comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just pressing buttons wildly. The BRIBBAREE Progress Association actually runs the water supply out there. Council, while it has some minor oversight, does not actually run the water supply. It is entirely owned and run by the BRIBBAREE Progress Association. So they're buying the meters off us. We provide a little bit of assistance to them, but they actually own the water supply out there.
Thank you for that, Director.
In that case, I'll go with the amendment.
Thank you, Walker. Okay, councillors, so we've got an amendment to that we've read out, and they move in a second. We're happy with that. If there's any other questions, I'll put that. All those in favour? See everyone's hand. I can. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 2081 is the design and construction of an inclusive playground in Young project update. There's a report from councillors and a recommendation.
I've got a question, Mr. Mayor, before we go to this.
Councillor Armstrong. I'm going to watch the screen. Okay. Councillor Armstrong.
So thank you. Resolution 333 of 18 doesn't seem to have been given effect. I'm just wondering why we're considering something that council's already resolved to do something entirely different back in 2018.
Thank you, councillor. I'll direct that back to the reporting officer, the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did work with Touch by Liver at the time, and then it became Variety Australia to certainly design the playground out there, and they provided us with a lot of professional assistance to design the playground, and that's how we got the design company via Variety Australia. At that stage, when we started talking about building the facility, Variety certainly did not have a lot of experience nor the wish at the time to get involved with building. They wished to provide us with advice during the construction to ensure that we had the right disability access and types of materials and types of equipment in that area. So we did go to tender for constructions or for a construction company. As I've said in the report, at that point, it was over the budget that we were told we had at the time. Council, I'll start that again. Staff cannot just abandon a tender that we have gone to. Council must make a decision and formally cancel a tender and then decide what to do with that. Hence my recommendation there. But certainly the resolution from 2018 you're referring to was given due course there, and we certainly worked with the consultants that were provided by Touch by Olivia and Variety Club. We got to a point though where we needed to do more work that they weren't able to provide us.
Thank you for that, Director.
Question, Mr. Mayor, for the Director. If were Creative Outdoors and More and Scape Constructions advised, were their tenders rejected, or what's the current situation? Surely we haven't gone a year without any advice to both companies.
I could answer that, but I'll pass it on to the Director of Infrastructure. You have to unmute yourself, Director.
You're still on mute, John.
Thank you. We did advise them that there was a delay with the project, and we have spoken to them a couple of times since then. As I said in the report, that given the extended delays, it's appropriate that we just reject all tenders and start that process again with those two particular companies.
And Councillor Walker, you have a question.
Yeah, question. The debate for a playground in this area has been going on for many years, and many of the issues considered for a playground in that area was considered a dangerous spot for a playground. There's a shortage of parking, and it would impede on future parking for the pool facility. There was complaint at one time of noise from the bowling facility and also from flooding from the creek. I'm suggesting that rather than look at a proposal of that area, what is happening, can I ask, to the venture playground at the PCYC, which is just up the road and which could facilitate all things properly?
Councillor Walker, I'm not too sure if any of the current staff are probably even aware of any of that. That goes back to the former Young Council and a proposal by some councillors at the time to have it wasn't so much a playground like an adventure park, I believe was the terminology used at the time. There was some money raised to have a design done, which I believe was raised 30-odd thousand, I think. Don't quote me on any of this, councillors. And that was done, and the concept from there was to raise money from the community, and that they had a community committee formed, and they were going to raise the money to build this adventure park. That never ever eventuated anywhere, and I don't think there's. I could be wrong again. I've been wrong before. I don't think was ever on the former council of Young's books about it. It was talked about for sure, but it never progressed any further. So that's what I'm pretty sure Councillor Walker's talking about at the time. Councillor Rolls got a hand in there, I can see. Councillor Rolls, just before I go there, with Councillor Rolls, can I have a mover and a seconder for what we've got on the table in front of us before we debate too much more? I've got it moved by Councillor Horton.
Mr. Mayor, I think I need to call a point of order, and the council's already resolved to remove its tendering obligations in accordance with Section 55 of the Local Government Act. It's also resolved to delegate authority to the General Manager or their delegate to negotiate a contract for the design, procurement and delivery of the inclusive playground, not exceeding the funding amount allocated to the project. Now, I can't see how, whilst this resolution is still upon the books, how council can enter into a contract with someone else when there's not a resolution to enter into a contract with Libby. So certainly this report doesn't provide any background or any context to why that resolution 333 of 18 can't be given effect. I don't think that this is the right thing.
Thank you, Councillor. I might call on the General Manager for comment then.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding from the discussion with the Director of Infrastructure is, and the way in which a motion works, staff undertake to exercise and fulfil the motion. I understand from the Director of Infrastructure, and I'll ask him to confirm my understanding is correct once I finish speaking, is the motion was unable to be fulfilled because we were unable to reach agreement with the people who were provided with the direct dealings. And as they failed, we then have to come back to proceed in the manner which is outlined in this report. Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Osland, do you care to add to that or clarify?
Thank you, General Manager. I would agree with that part of it. I think that we have undertaken and are still undertaking the resolution that Councillor Armstrong refers to, in that we are getting professional advice from Variety and Libby's Place. We are now talking about the actual delivery, which they weren't able to provide. We went to public tender for that delivery, and that is what I'm talking about here in terms of cancelling that particular tender for the actual physical delivery, not so much the resolution of providing assistance by Variety Club and Libby's Place.
Thank you for that, Director.
You need to rule on that point of order.
Councillor Armstrong, I believe that staff have probably covered your point of order. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not satisfied with it at all. I believe that this recommendation before us is in direct odds with a resolution of council. I'd like to see the documentation from Variety, and I certainly would suggest that any report that's going to be provided to council in future that is in direct odds with an existing resolution should have a bit more context applied to it than this currently was. This one has, given that it is not in accordance with a resolution of council. I'm just astounded that this thing can go on this long and no one seemed to know too much about it. The community's asked for it. The state government has been good enough to provide the funding for it, and I commend the state government for that. But Hilltops Council has fallen over its feet. This is an absolute joke. Why don't we have it now? Why are we going back out the tender? I'm just flabbergasted. I'm absolutely flabbergasted.
Councillors, now's the time. I do need to make a decision on the point of order. And while I don't enjoy doing this, I think the point of order stands. I think we need to look at how this has been dealt with. At this present moment, I only have a mover for that recommendation. I haven't had a seconder, so it's not up on the table actually yet because it hasn't been seconded. So it might drop off because I believe Councillor Armstrong may have some credit in his point of order. A bit of more information in regard to this project. It did slip between the cracks, there's no doubt about that. And if councillors go back to the September business paper when we met in Harden, and there was a project update list in that business paper, it said this project was 85% completed. I suggest that council as well as myself had their minds on other things that particular night, but it's a fact that's in that business paper. So given Councillor Armstrong's point of order, I would be happy enough for this this item not to be put, but I've got a mover for it. So is there anyone prepared to second this recommendation? Councillor Stadmiller, you seconding the recommendation? Councillor Stadmiller's moved and seconded.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm seconding the recommendation just so we can have some further debate, and we'll see whether it's voted up or down. The thing that most worries me is the title site investigations, where it says, due to the proximity of Tresillian Park to the Young Aquatics Centre, a precautionary site investigation program is currently being undertaken. These investigations consist of a mixture of drilled auger holes, approximate depth 4 to 6 metres, along with a trench. The material removed from these test locations will be inspected for rubble and asbestos-containing material to determine if contamination similar to the Young Aquatics site is present. Initial investigations undertaken by a geotechnical firm did not detect the presence of rubble and ACM. However, only one borehole was sampled at that time. So it says a mixture of drilled auger holes have been made and a trench, and I'm just confused as to why the rest of those auger holes haven't been sampled and why we're entertaining potentially putting a playground next to a site that has proven to cost council an enormous amount of money in asbestos-containing material removal in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for your commentary, Councillor Stadmiller. I'll take that on board as a very valid fact. I think, councillors, the thing to be addressed here, I'll rule on a point of order against this motion being put. I believe that point of order takes precedence over dealing with this matter at this present time.
Yeah.
And that's the advice I believe and I've been given. So given that,
I think that's correct, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Councillor Flannery. This matter won't be put to this council for a vote on tonight. I stand on Councillor Armstrong's point of order. Thank you. Next item is the Hilltops work report. There's a report there, councillors, and the recommendation is there. Any questions or comments in regard to that? It's moved by Councillor Horton, seconded by Councillor Manchester. Was that? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Any questions or comments before I put that?
I've got questions, Mr. Mayor. The most obvious, I think, is why we've got working young occurring in, well, throughout the report. It refers to, for example, sealed road repairs on page 115. Under Southern, it's got young area resealing as per Western section above. Throughout the report, there are crossovers of what work's going on where. Surely we can get, it's not that difficult, the relevant areas put in the correct sections. And I noticed that there's marking of ovals under parks and gardens, routine maintenance and mowing of recreation grounds, sporting fields, ovals, parks and reserves, ongoing as needed. Could we get detail on what council's position is on routine maintenance of marking ovals and so on? Line marking of 2 corner ends of track for athletics. If we're so short of money, why hasn't a decision been made on whether some of these works should be occurring or not?
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, for that. Any other questions or comments in regard to that report? Councillor Stadmiller.
Mr. Mayor, just a question for the relevant director, which echoes Councillor Flannery's comments as to why we're taking on new work or applying a seal to a dirt road that had previously not been sealed for 100 years. Jolambi Road in Harden recently had 1.5 kilometres of sealing occur on it, and I just would like to ask the relevant director or the general manager there as to why that occurred in the current climate.
Pass it over to the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of Councillor Flannery's questions, right now I've got crews going backwards and forwards between various depots, and I've got some people in Arden Depot doing work in Young and people in Young Depot doing work in Boorowa. So there's some reporting that we need to tidy up there, and I'll acknowledge that. The work in terms of line marking, that was done pre-COVID while we were still doing some of that work, and so that's now stopped. All of that stopped. In terms of Jolambi Road, Councillor Stadmiller, I have been advised that that was a pre-existing commitment, but I would tend to agree. My comment to that is that there is a lot of greater maintenance required on Jolambi. They were up and down there a number of times per year, and it was cheaper to seal that road rather than come back with greater maintenance 3 and 4 times a year. That's the reason it was done.
Thank you for that, Director. Any other questions in regarding that report?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, look, whilst I think it's good to get all gravel roads sealed where it reduces maintenance, I'd have to say Jolambi Road is one of the better roads. It runs basically along a ridge, so it doesn't suffer the problems with water that we get in these storms by and large. So I don't accept that, and I'd be, given I drive past it frequently, I don't know that the grade that goes up and down there 3 times a year, and certainly if it does, I don't think that fits in with the planned maintenance. Could we get from the advice from or some feedback from the director on what is the approach to parks and gardens? Obviously, they still need to be kept looking neat and tidy for aesthetics purposes, but what will be our spend and approach on them? I noticed that there's substantial replanting of annuals in and around the Young area. Is there a plan on the budget and expenditure of money, parks and gardens and ovals? I would think it's unlikely that most community sport will return in the near future.
To the Director.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have the costs to hand at the moment, but I can certainly get those to you. But certainly we have made the decision in terms of our gardens and our parks and ovals to keep them mowed and maintained so that people can go and use them for exercise and for unorganised exercise, if I may, rather than the organised sport that we used to have. So that people can go and walk around, they can jog on their own, keeping the appropriate social distancing, but generally feel good about themselves. And certainly that's the reason we're keeping the gardens in the 3 of our towns maintained, is so that the community feels good about itself, rather than seeing plants dying off and roundabouts looking old and daggy.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stadmiller.
Just some information to hand this afternoon. New South Wales Rugby League released a media release regarding a potential restart for a number of their competitions, which would affect both Group 9 and potentially George Took if those boards were to approve a resumption or a commencement of their seasons. They're talking late June, early July from memory, which means that some seasons may not be entirely written off, and that it does mean that some of those fields will need to be maintained up to those dates potentially, just to inform other councillors.
Thank you for that, Councillor Stadmiller. Having said that, I'll put that recommendation for the works report. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 2083 is the action summary report. The report's there and the recommendation in front of you, councillors. You can move up. Councillor Manchester, I believe, was that? Yep. That Councillor Flannery, second. Yep, thank you. Questions or comments on that report before I put it?
Mr. Mayor, just a question for the Director. The inaugural meeting of the Weeds Committee failed due to a lack of quorum. Could we have advice from the Director as to when another meeting, or the inaugural meeting, still could occur, noting that in the previous report it had substantial weed spraying, and also didn't want to address it explicitly because I feel if we set the committee up we should be able to work through it, but there's been extensive roadside weed spraying occur. Roadside weed spraying is by and large used from bushfire control measures, and like that is on the verge of the road, and I don't think we're at a risk of a bushfire at the moment. Could we get advice on when, and it will obviously be via Zoom, we could hold the inaugural Weeds Committee meeting?
Thank you, Councillor. To the Director. I believe the Director of Infrastructure would be the person to answer that question. No?
David.
Shaking his head. David, Roland, sorry. Up the top, Councillor, Director. Talk, David.
Okay. Yeah, well, it was a pity that we didn't have the numbers for the first meeting, so we do want to have that as soon as possible. Of course, the COVID limitations on having meetings has had some impact, but the longer it goes on, the more need for us to find other ways to do that, including Zoom. So I'm happy to get back to you the next week or two about some ideas around that.
Thank you for that, Director of Sustainable Growth. Any other questions in regard to that report? If not, I'll put that report. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Yep. Thank you, councillors. Correspondence for information. It's there, councillors, and a recommendation. And a mover for that. And a seconder, please. Councillor Manchester, thank you again. Councillor Horton, second that. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to questions with notice. And we have some questions on notice. And the Director of Strategy and Organisation Performance is responsible for that. So the questions with notice are from Councillor Wallace. So would the Director like to speak to that reply?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
For purposes of this, I'll vacate my chair and give it to the Director so he can respond, so we don't have the.
Can I be heard clearly from here?
Obviously not.
Yeah, no, councillors can hear. Thank you. Thank you, councillors.
The first question with notice was in relation to the status and progress of the joint use library. The deed and lease were executed in January and the executed documents returned from the Minister on the 14th of April 2020. The timelines have been slightly delayed due to COVID-19, obviously, but the schedule at this stage, the indications have remained on the project completion day 1, term 2, 2022. As a final contract completion date. Commencing construction is subject to securing the appropriate development approvals for the state significant development application, which is currently with the Department of Planning and Environment, or the consent authority rather than council, and submissions are being considered in relation to that. In relation, the public notification period is completed with 13 submissions received, and the department is awaiting further information from the applicant before further progressing the state significant development application to assist in covering matters raised within the submissions. In addition to the SSDA and project timelines, Council and Heritage New South Wales have received a range of queries and correspondence in relation to heritage values in current type and surrounding areas. The matters raised have been investigated by the part of the SSDA assessment and work currently underway by Heritage New South Wales in relation to the proposed heritage listing for the precinct that was discussed earlier in the other agenda item. Council will continue to work with various sections of the New South Wales government involved in the approval and construction of the joint facility in relation to the heritage precinct and also in relation to the construction contract to monitor and track progress on the matter and continue to report as the SSDA progresses and the construction work progresses, and manage any issues that arise in accordance with that. At this stage, funding for the proposal, council contribution and all the matters related financially that within the parameters that were locked down in the funding instruments, and there doesn't appear to be any financial exposure to the council other than COVID-19 or any delay issues surrounding the fact that I would consider there to be any financial exposure to COVID-19 delays or any other issues related to that project for council. The next question related to the impacts of revenue impacts of COVID-19. Our collection report earlier revealed only modest softening during the month of March in overall collections. That has softened a little further during April, with most affected requests coming in from water customers. Overall, council has received 15 requests for hardship relief or instalment payment plans during March. That's approximately double during the month of April. So there is a trend for more hardship applications. Council is processing these applications on the basis of evidence, so we're considering hardship applications on the basis of actual evidence of financial hardship, considering circumstances such as if people can provide information about whether they've actually lost employment or encountered some other circumstances such as having been cared for sick or elderly relative information like that that provides some genuine information for us to consider about financial hardship if people grounds or require that hardship if there's council's policies that we have back evidence base to provide a relief under council's policy that allows us to provide some relief to rate payers and customers to council in those circumstances. In terms of overall cash flow impacts, some councils are factoring in quite large disruptions really for us. It's too early to tell the magnitude of the cash flow consequences. So it's we're working constantly on that day to day, trying to assess it's still a little bit too early to tell what the because it's such a notable base, what the exact consequences of the economic downturn on both our revenue side and our cost side. The magnitude of the shortfall, if you've known the consequences, probably cover that in the report. We've listed in the report the information about New South Wales Legal Reward and the consequences for our staff. Councillors working very closely with New South Wales body, like the government in New South Wales. We've got to deal on the local government in New South Wales legal orders, as I said. And so it's constant effort to keep up to date with what's happening in the sector. And I think the other thing that probably wasn't factored in this report was the lobbying effort that's covered up in MAYORAL, which where we're trying to keep with what's happening in the sector from a representation point of view. So, sorry for the rattling on. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that report, Director. Councillor Wallace, I don't know if you might have any particular questions or anyone else for that matter in regard to that. Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I thank the Director for the responses. That's great. I do have some difficulty, and it probably comes back to the Mayoral minutes in a sense, which I probably wasn't quick enough on the technology to respond. But we're not, as a council, in a position to know what this is going to cost us, or we can't really quantify, and yet we're going around the cap and hand trying to get money. So I have some problem with that, but that as it may. The response in relation to the shortfall seems to address the payment of rates and charges. It doesn't seem to address commercial tenants, and there may be other entities as well that provide revenue to council, which I imagine will have to be addressed. But I thank the Director for his report.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation to receive the note report, and I'd like, along with that, do a couple of questions to the Director. But could I move the recommendation that we receive the note report, and that we council extend licence fees for all food and beverage businesses, and for a further 6 months beyond the expiry date, as Part A, and then Part B, cease all fees and charges to local sporting clubs where they are unlikely to use their premises for the season. And if I can get a seconder for that, and then ask some questions.
Can we just have that documented what the actual recommendation is for us all, please, then?
Receive and note the report, and then Part A, we provide a 6-month extension to licence fees, which are currently on foot, but to licence fees for food and beverage businesses within the Hilltops Shire or region. This is Part A, and then Part B, suspend fees on local sporting clubs for the use of council premises where they do not use those facilities during the COVID period.
Taking on board Councillor Flannery's recommendation there to deal with that, it didn't really cover and come from that report, but given that I have the authority to consider that recommendation under some other matters of, let's say, urgency and requirements, I'm happy for Councillor Flannery's recommendation to stand as the mover of that recommendation, if someone like to second it.
Mr. Mayor, to allow me the opportunity to better consider that before I can potentially second it, can I just ask Councillor Flannery, if you'd indulge me, how he would see the non-levying of charges during the COVID-19 period would be done, given that Council's schedule of fees and charges is not done on a per usage basis, it's done on a per season basis. So before I can really make up my mind on this, I'd just like to know a little bit more about the mechanics of how he proposes that would work, if you would indulge me.
Councillor Wallace has got his hand up first before Councillor Flannery. Councillor Wallace?
I think I've just lost my face. Is that right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you. We can't see you.
You push the
Good. That's probably better for everyone. I was just going to say, I think that the motion is out of order. It's in breach of the code of meeting practice, in the sense that any motion has to state where the cost is going to come from in council's budget, and this motion doesn't.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wallace, and you're 100% correct. Okay, Councillor Flannery, I'll go back to Councillor Flannery, who wanted to move that recommendation in the first place. There's all sorts of issues around it. I don't know if you'd like to address the fact that Councillor Armstrong or Councillor Wallace first, about where that funding shortfall would come from, or answer Councillor Armstrong's question about the mechanics of it. Councillor Flannery.
Look, I acknowledge Councillor Wallace's issue, but I think we also are going to have substantial financial implications from COVID. So it will obviously come from borrowings in the absence of a federal or state government grant to cover some of these issues. To answer Councillor Armstrong's question, if, let's say, junior soccer in Young, Harden or Boorowa didn't use their facility, they could arguably come back to the hardship charge or write a letter saying we didn't use our facilities, why are we being levied? So I'm preempting that we don't charge them if they don't use their oval or whatever it may be for the season because of COVID. I can't see how we can reasonably charge sporting clubs if they don't use facility. And as to the licence fees, governments have prevented restaurants and clubs from opening. I think it's only reasonable that the council charges on those fees be either suspended entirely or they be given a 6-month extension, which we would have to fund out of borrowings. I don't know the full extent of that, but I again am saying we have a job to play in the community. We're either going to increase their hardship or we are going to do what we can to try and alleviate their hardship.
Thank you for that reply, Councillor Flannery. On the information that I've just heard then and what's been said already, I'm happy enough for Councillor Flannery's recommendation to be there. It hasn't got a second yet. So it has now. It's Councillor Stadmiller seconded it. Councillor Flannery basically just spoke to his motion. Anyone like to speak against it? I guess Councillor Wallace probably has already spoken against it. I would take that as speaking against it. Councillor Wallace? He lost me. Yep. Okay, thank you.
No. I think I was speaking against the validity of the motion. I now like to speak against it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It looks pretty much for the same reasons I had in relation to the previous motion brought by Councillor Flannery. I think there's a lack of equity here. I mean, certain, and look, I have absolute sentiment for these businesses that have been reduced in trade or closed down completely, and the sports clubs as well. But I think a lot of these matters are for the discretion of for the administration, because they have to be treated on a case-by-case basis. A lot of coffee shops are just running a takeaway service or whatever it may be. Certain clubs may be using the fields for a portion of time, but still not using it at others. So I just don't think we can make a blanket decision like this and be fair to all our ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. So I'll call if there's one more speaker who would like to speak for it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak for it.
Please, Councillor Stadmiller wants to speak.
I'm sorry.
For. Councillor Stadmiller?
Who has the floor?
Councillor Stadmiller.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you just have to bear with me here. Look, I agree with Councillor Flannery here. We really need to, and I think he's put a large emphasis on compassion towards our communities tonight, and the need to help get through this crisis. And I just see it as a sensible thing to do, and if it has to be found from borrowings, it has to be found. We don't see sporting clubs go under. We may see licensed clubs go under and not return, and licensed premises in pubs in town. And a lot of these sporting clubs use these pubs and clubs to further fundraise, and they're unable to do that at the moment, so they're under enormous financial stress. So I agree with Councillor Flannery and support him.
So back to, would anyone else like to speak against the recommendations being put?
Look, I'll get an opportunity to speak. Yeah, I'll speak against it then. In that, whilst I share the concerns, but the mechanics of it need to be thought through, and if the proposer would consider a pro rata adjustment for sporting clubs for the use of their grounds for the season, based upon the number of weeks available to them, given the length of the season, then I'd probably have to change my mind, and I'd probably vote the other way. So I'll leave that in your hands, Mr. Mayor, and the proposer's hands.
Look,
I'm happy with a pro rata.
I have some concerns about the whole matter, but what I'm going to do is got to move in a second. We spoke about it. I'll put it. All those in favour of Councillor Flannery's recommendation, raise your hands, please. 2, 3. We've got Councillor O'Connor, Stadmiller, Armstrong, Tuckerman, Flannery, and Manchester. Thank you. Those against? You've got Councillor Ingram, Councillor Walker, Councillor Horton. Councillor Rolls, did you vote either way then? Councillor Rolls?
I voted for it.
Thank you. So that recommendation is carried on those numbers. Good luck working it out. That takes us to item number 14, notice of motion, rescission, which there are none. Item 15 is confidential matters. Could I have someone move and second that we go into closed council, please? Moved Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? Thank you very much, councillors. We will now move into closed.